Hello everyone, my name is John and I'm from Vulgar Kitten Studios, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create a modular third-person controller using mecanim in Unity 3D. And the reason that I'm doing this is there's not really a whole lot of information out there about mecanim that's, I guess, descriptive or useful in such a way that you can translate it into multiple different projects. So I wanted to go ahead and do that for you. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a new project, and I'm going to call mine third person controller, and I'm just going to save that to my desktop and open that up in Unity. So uh, I'm running a dual monitor setup, so that's why you didn't see me create the project. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and go back to my desktop and bring over the project folder that I created in Unity, and I'll go ahead and open up the assets that will be included. There will be a link in the description of this video with a download to these assets, and it's basically just a small set of animations and a prototype controller or a prototype model that our artist put together. So that's for you. And I'm going to go ahead and just drag this entire folder into my assets directory, and so this is a fresh project. I haven't included anything except for this, and you can see that here in Unity. So I'll pull that back up and it should import it. Looks like it may take a minute, so I'll pause the video until it's done and I'll be right back. Okay, so it's completed, and as you can see, the only thing that I have in this project is the controller assets, and I'll just quickly go through this. This beta folder contains the beta model from Mixamo. Our artist just took this and converted it in Blender, made it a little bit more optimized topology, and also used the meta rig, which is just a prototype rig. It's still got some bugs in it, but it'll work for what we're going to try to do here today. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to set up a testing scene here. So I'll create a cube and give it an X scale of 100, Y scale of 0.5 or 0.05, and give it a Z scale of 100. And I'll also create a directional light to give us a little bit of lighting. I'll reset that and change the rotation of the X to 30, and then it'll give us a little bit of lighting here. And I'll also create a point of reference object, so I'll create another cube, and reset that position, zoom in on it, and just bring it up above the floor. And just so we're not looking at default diffused gray the entire time, I'll go ahead and I'll make a new material for this as well. I'll just go ahead and create a new folder and call it materials. And I'll create a new material and call it POR for point of reference, and change the color to red. And I'll just go ahead and drag that onto our point of reference. And so there we go. Play the game, we shouldn't really be able to do anything, just see the red cube there, and so that looks alright. And we'll go back to our controller assets, and the rest of these folders besides beta are just some animations that I've collected. I got a few of them from the Mixamo's prototype animations adventure pack for Unity 4, and some from Unity's default assets or default mecanim tutorial, and that's what we'll be working with here. So I'm going to go ahead and create three more folders. First one I'll name scenes, so that way we can save our scene. I'll go ahead and do that now. Go to File and Save Scene As. Go into Scenes and just call this Testing. And we'll create another folder and call this Scripts. And I'll go ahead and create two folders inside of this one. Call one Player, and I'll call the other one System. Okay, and the last one we'll need is a Resources folder, and this one has to be named Resources spelled appropriately in order for us to use the Resources class. And I'll create another folder in there, and I'll call that System as well. Okay, and so we'll go ahead and drag our model into the scene, Just place that right there. Play the game, we should be able to see him. Yeah, or her. I believe this is the female version. Okay. And so we can see that, so we'll go ahead and go into our system folder inside of resources, and we'll create an animation controller. I'm going to call this player animator. And if you're unfamiliar with the mecanim system, something new that you might realize is there's an animator instead of an animation component attached to your objects, or at least your character objects. And in order for the animator component to work, it does require an animation controller. So that's why we made the animation controller, and we'll actually be loading this in by script later on, but for now I'm just going to go ahead and drag it in to the component reference, so that way we can go ahead and start working with it. So before we get any scripting done, I'm just going to go ahead and create the animation state machine. And this isn't, if you've never worked with it before, this probably won't make a whole lot of sense to you right now, but just follow along and be diligent, and when we start scripting the behavior, you'll see how it all works together. So the first thing that we want to do is we just want to take one of our animations. So we'll drag in our idle animation, and you see how it's orange. This means that it's the default animation that will play whenever you start up the game. So now we have an idle animation, and that's all we really need to do to make our character idle. And there's no scripting involved with that or anything, it just plain works. So there we can see him idling now. Alright. And we're going to be covering a couple of basic concepts as well as a little bit more intermediate concepts. But for now, yeah, let's just go ahead and start this out. So I'm going to create a new, right click on the animator window and create state. Go to create new from blend tree. And I'm just going to call this one locomotion. And we'll double click that to go into the blend tree. I like to go ahead and keep these named the same, so locomotion, because it'll just be named blend tree even though you named it back here in the base layer. It'll still be named blend tree in here, so you just want to go ahead and change that. Okay, and so for the locomotion blend tree, we'll actually be using nested blend trees. So within this blend tree, we'll have two more blend trees. So we'll click on this plus under the motion parameters and click new blend tree, and just do that one more time, so that way we have our two blend trees. And we might as well go ahead and create our parameters now, and we'll be using 4 parameters. So we click the plus under parameters and we'll create a new float and call that speed. We'll need another float and call this direction. Create one more float and call this air velocity. And we'll create one bool and name this grounded. Okay, and for our locomotion state tree, we want to keep the parameter set to speed, so that way we can blend between these blend trees based on that speed parameter. Now for the other two, the nested blend trees, we'll use the parameter direction. Okay, I'll go ahead and name these. The first one we'll name walk, and the second one we'll name run. And go ahead and click on the walk. We'll add a motion field, or 3 motion fields, to each one of these blend trees. I don't think I did that right. Okay, well, I'll just go ahead and try to click the run one. There we go. And we'll add 3 motion fills to this one as well. We'll just go ahead and start constructing these. So in the motion section, we can drag animation clips into here and set up the thresholds and go ahead and start building the way that we want this to work. So we want, well, not run, we want walk here in the middle. And we'll want a left strafe walking for the top one and right strafe walking for the bottom one. We'll unclick this automate thresholds because we want to manually set these, and we'll set the first parameter for the left to be negative 0.3, and the middle one we just want to set that to 0, and for the bottom one we'll just set that to positive 0.3. Okay, and for run we'll do the same thing except for with running, so we'll drag run into the middle and we'll do right strafe on the right side, so bottom corresponds to right, and then left strafe for the top one. And just do the exact same thing because this is based on the direction parameter. We'll set that to negative 0.3, set this to 0, and positive 0.3. Okay, so look confusing yet? If not, then you probably don't need to be here. Alright, so I'll just try to give you a brief explanation of how this is going to be working. The speed parameter, we're going to use that to transition from idle. So I right click on idle and make transition and drag that up and click on locomotion. Okay, and do the same thing back as well because we want to transition back. So in our script, what we'll do is to move our character, we'll set that speed parameter based on input, and when that input changes, it'll feed in the value that we give it into this speed parameter here, which will tell the state machine to transition from its idle state into its locomotion state if that value matches. So we'll just want to give it a speed. We want to say if the speed is greater than 0.3, then we want to transition from idle into locomotion. And the same thing for back, except we want to say if it's less than 0.3. Okay? And in this little preview window down here, you can see how these are going to be blending between each other. So if we turn up the speed, we can see it transitions from walk, see how it's light up here, it transitions from walk to run. And then for the direction, if that changes, he starts to change direction. And this we'll be setting in script as well. Instead we'll be using the direction based off of our input instead of speed, and that will make the changes that we need there. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and keep building this up. The next one that we'll need is a locomotion backwards, so I'll just toss that out of the way. So we'll create new state from blend tree, and we'll call this one locomotion backwards. Go ahead and open that. Well, might as well just copy it. So we'll copy this and paste it in the name over here. Okay. And for this one, we're not going to be using nested blend trees. We're just going to be using motion fields. So I'll add in 3 new motion fields, and we'll go ahead and go into the walk backwards. And for walk backwards, we just want to put that one in the middle, and then strafe back left on the top, and strafe back right on the bottom. Okay, and you can see we don't have a preview down here. If you do want to preview this, you can just take your beta rig and drag that into the preview window, and whatever your animation tree is doing, it'll preview it with that model that you selected. Okay, so we want to base this parameter off of direction, so we wanted to blend based on the direction value that we feed into this by script. So we can see that it transitions pretty nicely. Okay, so go back to the base layer, and we'll make transitions for this from idle as well. So we'll transition to and then back from, and we want to take that speed parameter and feed it in again. So we'll say if the speed is less than negative 0. Let's say 1. No, that's a little bit low. We'll just keep using 3. So alright, and we'll say the speed is greater than negative 0.3. Then we want to transition back into idle from locomotion backwards. Alright, and we already have our left strafe up here, but the way that it works in our state machine right now is we can only ever strafe left or right if we're also holding forward on the stick, and we don't really want that, so we'll create two new blend trees to the left and right of idle. Create from blend tree, and we'll set up strafing blend trees as well, so we'll say strafe left and strafe right. Okay. And again, we want to make sure that we name these appropriately. Okay. So we'll start off with the strafe left. Open up strafing again. Now, in this case, we just want to be able to shift between the running and the walking, so that way it's we can feed in pressurized values in our input. So we'll start that out by adding two new motion fields. And the first one, we want to make the walking animation, so we'll say left strafe walk on the top and just left strafe on the bottom. And instead of speed, we actually want to use direction in this case, so we'll change the parameter to direction, uncheck automate thresholds, and we'll set this to I believe it's negative 0.3 and negative 0.5, and we'll just do the same thing but in the positive direction over here. So add in two new motion fields, take the right strafe and put it in the running section, and right strafe walking and put it on the top for walking. Again, change the parameter to direction, uncheck automate, and now we want to say 0.3 and 0.5. And these can always be adjusted later, but for now I'm just using some default values. So we want to make our transitions, and we actually want to transition from and to the locomotion state from this as well. And so we'll go from idle to strafe left, and going from idle to strafe left, we will base that off of direction, and we'll make that less than 0.3, or excuse me, less than negative 0.3 since we're going left. And obviously, to transition back, we'll make the direction greater than negative 0.3. So transitioning from idle to right strafe, we'll make it greater than, or we'll make the direction greater than 0.3, and to transition back we'll go direction is less than 0.3. I put a negative in there, it's just supposed to be positive 0.3. Okay, and so we also want to make transitions to locomotion backwards, so we're just kind of making a diamond here. And for left strafe, to locomotion backwards. This is going to be a little bit more tricky. So we'll want to say, alright, from strafe left, we want to say that the direction is less than negative 0.3, but we also want to add another condition and say that the speed is less than, or speed is less than negative 0.3 as well. And so we'll say direction is greater than 0.3 for strafe right, and the speed is less than negative 0.3. Okay. And to transition back, we want to say that the direction is greater than 0.3, and the speed, we actually want to set speed is also greater than negative 0.3. So direction is less than negative 0.3, and the speed is greater than negative 0.3. Okay, let's go ahead and play that, make sure he's still idling, and he is. Alright, so we only have one more state to add in here, and this is going to be for our jump, so we'll create a new blend tree and call that jump. Okay, go in here and rename it again. And for this one we'll need 3 motion fields as well. Okay. And we'll put the fall in the top one, midair in the middle, and jump up on the bottom. Uncheck automate thresholds. Jump up, we want to set that to 4. This I'll set to a -5 and a -3 for midair. And this will be calculated based off of this air velocity float that we made earlier. And so these are actually just one frame animations, and we want to do this because we want to make a jump animation based off of input, as well as be able to using that same animation we want to be able to make the character look as if he's falling if they say walk off of a ledge or something. So that's why we're using this air velocity and these sort of values in here. And actually I think I might crank that up a little bit. We'll say that to -9, and we'll put that at a -5. So if we play this, ignore the errors on the bottom, that's for the editor. You see how it kind of makes a jump animation, but these are all just one frame animations. They're just transitioning between one another. And that's the point I was wanting to get across about that. Okay, and so for all of these we actually do want them all to be able to transition into the jump state, and the way that we'll do that is we will say grounded is equal to false to transition into the jump, and grounded is equal to true. Also for the locomotion, we also want to say that our speed is greater than 0.3 as well. And then for strafe left, we want to make a transition to that. So we will say grounded is equal to false. Make that equal to false. And I'm going to drag this over this way. It looks a little ugly right now, but we'll make a transition from idle as well into jump and back from there, just so we can see it. And into jump we'll say grounded is equal to false, and to go back into idle we'll just say grounded is equal to true. And there we go. I'm not going to worry about the locomotion backwards. You can add that in if you want. The logic that we'll write will work that way as well, but we'll get to that at a later point. And that's it for this video. In the next video we'll go ahead and start coding this. So I'll see you next time.